Will Haynes here, joined in studio by Jordan Sekulow, Executive Director of the ACLJ, who has been traveling in Europe with our European Center for Law and Justice, as well as doing a lot of other things. You've seen him multiple times from Europe on the broadcast, one time from the UN. But Jordan, I wanted to get a quick update, especially as we talk about this in light of this 35 years of justice campaign that we're in, where donations are doubled to the ACLJ as we redouble our efforts here, knowing the attacks we're seeing. And also, I wanted to kind of tie that in because when you donate to the ACLJ, it supports all our work. It supports this broadcast. It supports the European Center for Law and Justice, our work at the UN. But how important the next 35 years are looking ahead in light of what you were able to accomplish and see while you were in Europe?
Yeah, I think we have some very unique opportunities right now in Europe. And this is, obviously, you've seen some successes of political movements that really we have not seen the likes of in Europe in the modern conservative movement. I mean, so to have allies, I mean, maybe you go back to Margaret Thatcher. I mean, maybe to make some kind of comparison to how close we could see some of these political movements work with the United States. There are a couple that have been successful. We've seen it in Italy. We've seen it in Hungary. We were in Hungary first. That's where we started our trip with Viktor Orban. But we have also seen right on the edges of victory in places like France, Spain, Poland, Romania. I mean, the list kind of goes on. And you're seeing these movements, Germany as well. Europe doesn't really know what to make of them, especially the European Union. And so there is a concern now that the movements that have been successful, that this is the key test for their survival. Whether it's not what we saw in France and trying to take Marine Le Pen off the ballot there so she can't run for president in 2 years. We've also seen a lot of concern out of Hungary with the EU's involvement potentially in their next election, which is in another year as well, because if they could get rid of Viktor Orban and get rid of Hungary as this example of what it means to have secure borders in Europe, and then honestly, how shockingly different Budapest would feel to other major European capitals right now because of what they've done on immigration in Hungary and the criticism they take. But no one is kind of sitting on their victories. They know that the mass force against them, a lot of this is the Soros money, and a lot of American leftist groups that are going to come in and test these movements to see if they can shake up enough of their support. Most of them get around 30 to 40% of the support, and then they coalition with another part of the government. Can they beat them once and for all? And what I mean once and for all is, can they beat them for another couple decades? So where we have to seize on this for us and for why it's so important for the work that we do at the ACLJ and the ECLJ is, I don't know when we'll have another opportunity like this to have such close relationships with European elected officials and European political movements that are not afraid to be associated with American political movements. And in the past, you might see the word conservative used in France. You might see it in England and the UK, some of their elections as well. And it does not mean the same thing. It might mean that we're more similar than maybe the left, but when you actually start looking at the politics of it, groups like us, if you care about issues like the family, if you talk about life at all, if you talk about immigration, those were fringe movements.
Right.
Like they were kind of in the United States in the 70s and 80s. They've now built up to becoming in the mainstream, and I think what we can do and what we have to do, it's so important that we do, is make sure that we're providing enough support to those groups to make sure they stay within the mainstream of the political battles. It doesn't mean you're going to win every election. We don't do that here in the United States, and we know that's not realistic. But it's that you stay within the mainstream. So to have one day movements that are friendly to the United States leading these European nations.
Well, and you even bring that up, the issues that we care about and have fought for in the United States for 35 years as the ACLJ are things that took 35 years to fight back against. And even think about the pushing back against Roe versus Wade, how long that took. If you almost look at the European conservative movement that has some mirrorings of those early social conservative American-style movements, they are in the early stages. And how great would that be for the United States, for policy, for our allies, the way that we interact with them, if we're able to see real freedom in the European countries that we haven't really seen. I mean, you think about what you see about how free speech is being limited in these countries because they are afraid of these movements. And that's why it is important. If we can have allies that uphold American values, which are really human values, human rights, really. These are things that shouldn't be considered American conservative values. But if we can really help fight for that and find allies there, even back at home, that helps the American people because the foreign policy isn't at odds. Right. Even if it is a Democrat in office that is against our values that we have to fight here at home, there could be pressure from European partners. Like, we don't like what you're doing, future unnamed Democrat that is trying to silence conservative Christians' free speech. Because of that, we can actually have effect even here at home by working through this.
And how long have we in the United States had to say, okay, we have the foreign policy relationship with the country, we have an economic policy, but we know they think we're crazy. I mean, that's kind of, and if you go to their media, you will see their domestic media, while they respect the United States' power at these global meetings and summits, and of course, when it comes down to actual negotiations and support, whether it's foreign policy or economic policy, at the end of the day, these are not great friendships right now. And they are kind of looking down on the United States and our politics, and especially the politics of the right. But that is because I think the reason there's such disdain is because inside their own countries, it's brewing to a level they've never seen before. So when these movements are now, and it's tougher to wrap your head around as an American, but understand that a movement in a European country that's getting 40% of the vote, where Emmanuel Macron's party in France probably averages about 25% of the vote. Mm-hmm. Now, he's able to put together some bizarre coalition partners to remain as leader of the country. And what the conservatives now are looking for is who will be that more mainstream political group that will join and give us that extra 10%. I think what our job is to do is make sure legally they're not being interfered with. One of the things we're watching very closely, again, I think leading up to the next election in Hungary, is how much outside money. And when I say outside money, most of it's coming from the United States of America, right, is going to elect far left socialists to overrun a conservative movement that is happening naturally and locally and domestically. And yet our own dollars, and listen, a lot of this was coming through USAID before, right, are going to try and defeat these political allies that we have.
And that also goes back to the agenda of President Trump, that things like cutting USAID, because we found out at the ACLJ that the Obama administration was funding groups in Israel to try and overthrow Bibi Netanyahu. Right. Imagine if it were Kamala Harris, the president right now, what USAID would be doing at upcoming elections for their political adversaries abroad in places like Hungary. You better believe that it wouldn't just be NGOs in the United States that would be funding it. It would be NGOs in the United States funding that, but with your taxpayer dollars. These are the things that we have to uncover. We have to fight back against. That's why it is so important that we have an office in Europe, that we have offices around the world, in Jerusalem, that we have offices here around the country. Because the ACLJ, while it may have not sought to be this global, impactful law firm, because of you, it is.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.